Now.
Yep.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to MDC Tidbits. I'm Henriette Dybkjær from MDC, and I will be the host for your lunch today. MDC Tidbits is a brand new concept that we launched just last week. So this is actually the fourth time that we're doing it. I don't know if all of you are aware what a tidbit actually is. To be honest, I wasn't when my colleague proposed that we should call this for MDC Tidbits. So a tidbit is a small piece of interesting knowledge, or it can also be a small piece of delicious food. So we thought it was just perfect to put these two things together, and we will deliver small pieces of interesting information for your lunch. And that will be every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 12 o'clock. And you'll get the invitations from MDC if you sign up for receiving them, or on our LinkedIn profile. So let's get started. Some of you unfortunately experienced a little bit of svipser, as we say in Danish. We unfortunately went live, and we had really struggle of making this one work. So sometimes it helped to say all the bad words, and then everything will come out fine. So this is what we're hoping will happen today. Now we have tested with Chris Rycroft, who is our chef of today, and we hope the technical problems will stay away for today. So first of all, I want to say skål to all of you. I'm ready with my little lunch today. I hope you have also prepared some nice, delicious food tidbits for your lunch. And the knowledge tidbits will be from Chris Rycroft. And Chris, you are a leadership coach, and we have been working a little bit together with you, doing some presentation courses and stuff like that for MDC members. And I'm so happy to see that you have started doing some espresso shots at LinkedIn about leadership. I have challenged you for quite a time that you should be more visible on the social media. So Chris, let's get rock and roll with the tidbits about how to become better at webinars. I'm personally really looking forward to it, and I'm gonna give you my first advice. This little friend is what I'm trying to make me look into the camera. So I'll put it on the camera again. Just a small piece of paper and a hullemaskine that can make the hole, and it's just spot on. Chris, come up to the stage and give us all the best advices you have about how to become better at webinars and online meetings, our reality at the moment. Welcome, Chris.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Henriette. So I want to start right out of the gate, right in your face, because that's really how I work, with asking you a question. How many of you admit to doing something else whilst you've been attending an online meeting? You can write in the chat. If not, you could just probably nod your head. If it's anything like a lot of survey out of 500 Americans that was polled, this is actually from an Implement slide. Thank you for them for a recent presentation. It showed that 65% commit or admit to doing other work. I mean, 43% look at social media, their Facebook, their LinkedIn. I mean, 21% are even shopping online. So what does that tell you? It tells you that we have a massive engagement problem of catching people's attention. But it actually gets worse than that. In fact, in yesterday's Alatinget, I think that's my pronunciation right, a couple of diplomats were just saying how difficult it is to move into the negotiations now, everything around Brexit. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to go into that discussion. But right now, they were just saying, you go in with what you have, and it's really difficult to get convinced via a video camera. In fact, our lovely lady, Margareta, she says it's actually even more difficult because it's a completely different discipline to listen to each other and understand what's at stake when you cannot see each other. So one of the first tips we always say to everybody, always bring the video on. Ask the people, when you send them a Zoom meeting, our suggestion is always advise them in the front, make sure that they know it's going to be a video meeting. I mean, some people turn up in their pajamas, and that's one of the reasons why they don't turn on their videos. So one way of just adding a little bit of touch is to get that video part. But what I want to do today is I want to help you with 3 tips. Many of you might know I'm a man of 3s. I like to keep things simple. So I want to tell you about the power of the opening, how to open an online meeting you might not have considered before. Then I'm going to talk to you about Wi-Fi triggers. This is a rhetorical tool for audience connection and engagement. And then I want to talk about the rule of 3s. It's a really powerful communication tool and really help you with your online meetings, your webinars, your sales meetings. Now, some of you out there might say, well, Chris, I've heard that before. And if you have, that's really, really great. But what I really ask of you, ask yourself, do I really do it? Because if you do it, 10 out of 10. And if you don't, then maybe this is just a trick to say, okay, let me just try it. Because everything I do here today is to try and give you something that is immediately executable. So if you have a meeting this afternoon, you can immediately go away and apply it. So let's get started. Let's look at the first one, the power of the opening. And this is probably one of the most underutilized aspects of a meeting. And if we remember the famous Jaws scene back from 1975, can you believe that? The famous scene where the shark goes for Chrissy, the music comes in. It's an opening that we'll always remember. Now, I don't think any of your online meetings, webinars, presentations could be at that level of what Steven Spielberg created. But what it does tell you is really just how important to capture that attention is. So what most people don't think about is what to do in the first 15%. And what most people do is it's fairly predictable. It's fairly boring. Hello, how are you? Nice to be here. Thanks very much. This is my resume. How many years I did this? How many years I did that? It gets very boring. And John Medina, he's a molecular brain specialist. He wrote a great book, Brain Rules. And one of his rules was we don't pay attention to boring things. So I'm sure many of you might have heard those classic starts before. And within around 90 seconds, 120 seconds, maybe even less than that, we're dashing for the coffee and we're already starting to work on our email and other stuff in life. I've seen it hundreds and hundreds of times from the most experienced people out there, you know, from McKinsey, Korn Ferry, I mean, I see it all over. People just don't think about how to open up more properly, more strongly. So I want to talk to you about what we call the rule of primacy and recency. That means people remember the things you say at the beginning, and they tend to remember the things that you say at the end. And most people never really think about that. So what we want to do is I want to give you a little attention curve now of a typical audience. I mean, if you think about this, we're in a meeting, the attention goes up, and then it quickly comes down, right? And then we probably start thinking, let's do a bit of work. We dip out, maybe I need to go and get a cup of coffee. What am I doing for holiday this year? And this year it's really going to be challenging with COVID. So we perhaps need to think a bit more about that. And then maybe we have to think about, do I need to buy Fiskepin tonight or kartoffler or whatever it is that you do? So the challenge is that we're leading with a very disengaged audience. So we want to understand how we optimize their brain flow to where we can connect the information. So what that really means is starting off well. I'm going to teach you how to do that. And regularly checking in throughout your presentation. So you ask them a question, maybe you do some polling. Even an online meeting, it's great if you have a facilitator who can say, oh, you know, Britt, you have a comment around this particular area, bring them in. And then I'm going to teach you how to do a strong finish. So let's have a look at the start. So the idea is for opening, don't be predictable. So ask a question, just like I did, in terms of how many of you admit to doing something else online. You've got to grab their attention. Maybe share a surprising statistic. Provide some form of value. What's in it for them? So by the end of my session, all of us are going to walk out with at least these 2 or 3 ideas that we can go use going forward. Do something unexpected. My wife recently had a online meeting where they wore silly hats. I mean, everybody was laughing, but I mean, it really drove engagement. Other people wrote to me and say that, you know, they start off with quizzes, bingo. I mean, there's lots of things that you can do to start off with to really create that attention grabbing. Maybe start off with a short story as an analogy. That's also very powerful. The whole idea, ladies and gentlemen, is you've got to be thinking about the opening and what is it that you're going to do. Now, so that was the opening. Now, you probably already know the middle percent, that's easy. But the last 15% is super, super under optimized. So for all of you listening, if you can just master the beginning and the end, I guarantee that your online meetings, your webinars will really start to rock, and you'll already separate yourself from everybody else out there. We won't talk about Yandalore for the moment. But let's look at it from a attention span at the last bit. So now we're down at the bottom here. We're looking at the end. We've just thought of the shopping list from Netto. We hear the famous person say, okay, are there any questions? And maybe there's 2 or 3 questions. Maybe there's none. It's a bit painful sometimes there. And then what the presenter tends to say, okay, is there any more questions? No, thanks very much. And I don't want to make sure that you never end with that. So you want to end up with a strong way. So never, ever do this, right? So always finish on your main point and not, so no more questions, thank you very much, right? So how it can go with, are there any more questions? No. So before you leave, I'd like to remember of this one key point, right? And you can do that in meetings. So most meetings finish, okay, yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, we'll see you next time. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks very much. I want to remind you before you walk out this door, the one thing we have to commit to on this strategy, right? So what that really means, ladies and gentlemen, get strong with the beginning and get strong with the end. These are super, super easy areas to drive engagement, and most people don't do anything with them. And already, if you start to do that, you will already separate out. People want to come to your meetings because they'll just be refreshingly different. So now, for those of you who've been following me for a while, you know that I'm known sometimes as the Wi-Fi man. What does that mean for the people who've never heard of Wi-Fi? It means what's in it for you. And people are always motivated to do what they want to do. And whenever you want to get them to make a decision, you're in a negotiation. The more you can help them see what's in it for them, right? Or what's in it for you if you're the facilitator, right? The more higher chance you're going to get them to buy into it. Now, on a lot of webinars or meetings, it's fairly passive, right? So what you want to do, I want to show you a trick called a Wi-Fi trigger in order to try and draw the audience back in. So a Wi-Fi trigger is very simple. Think of a question that could be on your audience's minds and ask it as a rhetorical question. So you might say, why is this important? It's important because. Why should we adopt this new policy for our strategy? It's important because. Why should you care? You should care because. Haven't we tried this before? Yes, we have, but this is why it's different. So these are some other examples that you can use. But all you have to do for a Wi-Fi trigger is you have to think a little bit in advance of what could be on their mind. A question to you might be now, Chris, do I really know how to use a Wi-Fi trigger in lots of different situations? What I want to do here today is, yes, you can. Here's the formula to do it. So think of in advance of a question that could be on your audience's minds, in your meeting participants' minds on a webinar, and ask it as a rhetorical question to draw them in a little bit into your session. It's super, super powerful. All right. So that's Wi-Fi triggers. I'm looking forward to any questions that you have in a few minutes. But the final thing I want to ask you about, or tell you about, is what I call the rule of threes. Now, believe it or not, we've all been brought up in not necessarily consciously knowing the rule of threes, but we've seen it in rhetoric all over the world. Good, the bad, the ugly, blood, sweat, and tears, friends, country, Roman, right? It's a good rhetorical piece of advice to use. But when it comes down to using it in meetings, it really, really helps. You know, this is actually a McKinsey trick. McKinsey maybe took the rule of threes to another level. So whenever a McKinsey person had to convince a chief executive, they'd often always stick with 3 things, right? So, Mr. Executive, you should do the strategy for 3 reasons, or you should buy this company for 3 reasons. Ladies and gentlemen, we should do this new policy for these 3 reasons. The beauty of 3 reasons is the argument gets their attention and it's memorable. People can remember things in groups of 3s, right? If I said there's 7 reasons why we should do this, you'll already be in netto and you'll already be thinking of summer holiday, right? So if we just stick with just 3 reasons, you'll be amazed at how much you can do it. You're forced to choose actually the most 3 important reasons. I was reading this article about this McKinsey consultant, and he knew one of the consultants who was very, very skilled. And the chief executive said to him, so why should we do this? And he said, you should do it for these 3 reasons. And he actually didn't even know 3 reasons. He only knew 2 of them. So he gave him the 2 reasons. And then he said, you know what? The 3rd one's not important because the first 2 are, right? That's somebody who really knows their 3 reasons. So the other beauty is when I'm working with executives, you sound a lot more structured, confident, and decisive when you speak. It's easy for you to remember 3 things, but it's easy for you to present them in a very structured, confident way. So a tip to all of you, now it's coming up to 20 past 12. By the time we finish with this, all of you will probably talk, hopefully, to another human being today, right? And maybe you need to persuade that person, or the people, right? So think of using 3 reasons to do it, get in the practice of using the rule of 3s, and suddenly it will come out very, very quickly, automatically, when you least expected it, right? So already today, what I've done is I've shown you 3 things. I've shown you how to start more powerfully, how to get the opening right, and how to finish right. I've told you how to use Wi-Fi triggers, and I've also told you how to use the rule of 3s. Now, I know many of you are pretty alert out there, so you might say, well, actually, Chris, that was 4 things and not 3 things. But I'm a bit of a bonus guy. So for those of you alert, you notice that was 4 things. So now you get 4 for the price of 3. So what I'd like to do now is I want to hand it over to Henrietta. So we're going to run, I think I'm on 13 minutes, just about on time. So I'm going to hand over to Henrietta for the moment, who's going to run some questions and then hand it back to me to finish it off. So Henrietta, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Yes. Oh, I just thought about the crazy hats. So I went to my cupboard while I sneaked out and I found my celebrity cruises. So I thought I would do something different and give a cadeau to the cruise business, which is really suffering at the moment.
Great.
Chris, I like the 3 things. One thing that I often find difficult is when your employer they tell you about the vision, mission, values, or the 3 things you have to be as an employer of MDC. Then it's always 7 things, and you can't remember the vision, mission, value of your company. Isn't that right?
Yes.
So it's also something that can be used for making people remember what your employees.
There are some companies who actually only have 3 values, just so that people really remember them. Yep. And other aspects of, often those statements are written very complicated with no emotion in it. So again, it's a combination of getting the 3 points right, but also putting some emotion into it too.
So, Chris, I have a question here from Tia. In the planning of online meetings, how much time should I invest in the opening and the closing parts?
Tia, great question. And it's a question I get asked actually quite often. And what I always suggest to people is build your online meeting first, But if you're going to just about to go into an online meeting, have a think, spend a few minutes. Sometimes literally I could spend a couple of hours, believe it or not during work time, maybe I'm out with a dog or whatever. Sometimes I'm thinking, how am I going to open this, right? I mean, even how I was going to open today took me around, I don't know, 15 minutes to kind of process and think. So that's getting the opening. The opening is kind of really critical. You might say the closing is more of a process. It's just getting to understand how to do this process smoothly. And for all of you, think about going from this questioning to closing it off to offer them one more thing or two more things, right? You just want them, when they're finally finished with you or you're finished with your audience, for them to go away with the real point that you want them to make that. So Tia, does that answer your question? I hope it does.
Sophia, she asked, how can I, as a participant in an online meeting, which is fading fast, inject some energy? Wow, that's a good one, Sophia.
So Sophia, that's a really good one. And it's probably one of the most difficult things to do, right? Because like right now, and I hope you're not losing energy on this, it's difficult. I mean, maybe you can ask a question out there. If a good facilitator has it, that they can see it. So you might want to think of asking a question to try and bring yourself into the presentation, right? Sometimes that's not even possible. You're just sitting there like somebody who's just very passive and just watching, and that becomes really, really difficult. So again, ask yourself, how might I apply something that I'm hearing now, right? So challenge yourself to think about, how can I bring myself into it? But it's super difficult. It's super difficult. So if you have the chance, ask a question, make a comment, ask them to stop and ask for the audience feedback. Could you tell me about this or tell me about that? Does that help you, Sophia? Or Connor?
Sophia and Connor. Chris, I've been watching your espresso meetings or talks at LinkedIn, and there you are very often standing and moving around in the room. I really, really like that kind of attitude you have there. Could you give some good advice for? Is there something about where you have your hands, or something about how you position your camera? Is it better if you stand up rather than being sitting on your chair? Can you tell us something about that?
Good question. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to show you a little behind the scenes. I trust that's okay with you. So right now, it's a really expensive setup. I have this box. Can you see that? That's on the desk.
Wow.
And now I'm actually good job. I got some trousers on, but I'm actually standing here. I have the luxury of an elevation desk. So probably a lot of you don't have an elevation desk at home, but the more you can get the camera up to this kind of angle, the better it is. If I put it down like this, my wife says I'm putting on a bit of weight, so I'm getting some double chin. So I just have to be careful that, I'm not showing them. So it's quite good to try and keep it up like this, but that means you might need to do something a bit like that. Does that answer it, Henrietta?
It's a very good behind the scenes view you got us there. So we don't have to be shy if we have something similar at home when we're doing our webinars.
Yeah, it was a good job that I was wearing trousers today, wasn't it?
Yes. So what do you think about, is it good like to have a white background or a personalized background? I have thought that it was better to have my friend up here, min træmyreslure. Do you know what that is called in English?
Give that to me again.
Træmyreslure. It's a myreslure, an ant eater, which is living up in the trees. An ant eater. So I like to make it a little bit more personal. But what do you usually prefer, to have like a personal background or have like a neutral white one?
Well, there's two things too. I mean, try and have something neutral. I mean, I've actually changed my office around just for this webinar for you, because the backdrop I didn't have was very good. On some of the apps, you can actually select a virtual screen. So you can have a fake backdrop, right? Be careful with some of those, because they distort your head if they're not right, because they just don't really look right. Or you can have a green screen if you're going to do a lot of online meetings and your backdrop is not that good. I would suggest to get an online screen.
Okay.
Good. So Tia wrote, sometimes it's difficult to shorten one's material down and the presentation gets too long. How does one know where and where to cut away without missing good points? It's the oldest problem in the world. Less is more, right? So trying to condense it down to less slides. And that's one of the challenges with online selling at the moment, that most people, or online presentations, most people just took their standard presentation that we delivered physically and put that online. It simply doesn't work. So you've really got to put a lot of effort into really condensing it down. Try and get to the essence of your issue, right? And that way you can say, okay, do I really need this slide? If in doubt, leave it out, right? Ask yourself, get a friend to look at it, and they'll often say, well, why do you give me that slide? I don't need that slide, right? So if in doubt, cut it out. So Nikolai, so I tried to have the ambition to have at least one question which keeps my, maybe you can push for this as the organizer. Nikolai, could you just expand a little bit more on that, please? Because I'm not quite sure I've got you. I try to have an ambition to have at least one question which keeps my focus. Okay. Whilst I'm waiting for Nikolai to reply, to have at least one question which keeps my focus. Yeah. Okay. So turning around now, I've read the question again, Nikolai. What Nikolai was saying is a good tip, and it is a good tip for people. Try to have the ambition of at least having one point in focus. So when you start to lose your energy, listen to one comment or one thing that that's what I can focus on. When Henrietta said that's what I can focus on, and keep that focus to keep up your energy. So get your mind thinking, which is the point that I really want to walk away with, and just focus on that, and then just leave the rest. I hope that answers your problem. I hope that reinforces your tip, Nikolai, but it was a good tip.
So, Chris, is there any last thing you'd like to add?
Cool. Thank you for helping me there, Henrietta. I much appreciate it. That's the beauty of practice in presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, we did practice this technique, but Henrietta did it very well. Ladies and gentlemen, there's the one thing I want you to remember. Nothing I've showed you today is difficult. Hopefully not. But please just try, if you're a bit confused or stuff like that, I mean, reach out to me. These are my details. These are my contact details, right? If I can help you in any way, I can, but just try these techniques. They're not difficult. Maybe you don't master it right away, but just doing it several times, execution is the mother of everything. Knowledge is only power when you can execute it. And that's my last words to you. Go away, try it. I'd love to get some feedback from you. Or like I said, if I can help you in any way, reach out to me, connect to me on LinkedIn. I've already seen some LinkedIn connections coming right now. I don't click them, but I'm here to help you. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Chris, for sharing all your valuable information here. I'm gonna change a little bit in my beginning and in my ending of the presentation of our speakers. So I'm gonna ask you 3 things to do with the tidbits. So let's see, I'm improvising. So the first thing is, I want to say thank you so much for joining the tidbits, both you, Chris, and our audience. The second thing is that if you want to get invited to other tidbits. Thea, will you please write the web address in the chat so people can get invited for other tidbits? And the third thing is that we have tidbits every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 12 o'clock. And the next theme is on Thursday about the shipping market delights, and that will be by Christopher Rex, who is the chief analyst of Danish ship finance. So here you will get insights in the shipping market. Unfortunately, tomorrow we had a chef, but when you have people employed, it's so difficult because this chef unfortunately couldn't make it. So tomorrow we couldn't find a substitute chef, so we have to close down the restaurant for tomorrow. But I can tell you that the next couple of weeks are fully programmed, and we will put up the program on the website and post on LinkedIn as it comes up. So with these three things, share it with your colleagues as well, that we have these tidbits. Chris, thank you for joining.
Thanks
thank you
very
to
much
all
indeed.
of you, and have a wonderful day. And I hope you enjoyed this tidbit launch. Bye.
Cool.
Yes, it will be recorded. All our tidbits are recorded at the website.